We're live. We are live. Thank you. And welcome back. This is the Committee of Conference and H.949, the yield bill. And Beth St. James is about to walk us through tuitioning 101.
Oh gosh, can we make it like 301?
Maybe you're at 301.
Okay, 101. Let's do it.
Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. Are you all going to want me to share my screen at any point?
Yes, please.
Can I
Yeah.
have a Zoom link on it? Yeah.
And I don't, Scott had a slightly different night. I don't know if you want to talk about that before we hear.
Okay.
I don't
That-
know.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, don't get paper. It's okay.
Thank you.
You know, I actually like.
Okay, I just want to preface this by saying I am not an expert in what we are about to walk through. And I do not work in the field. I only know what's written in the green books and in state board rule and on the agency's website. So if something happens differently in the field, so be it. Okay, so chapter 21, maintenance of public schools. This is where the quote unquote town tuition program lives. Sections 821 and 822 require school districts to maintain elementary or high schools or pay tuition. And those sections set out under what circumstances those things happen. Sections 823 and 824 tell us how much tuition. So slightly different for elementary and high school. Should we focus on high school or elementary school?
Oh, yes. Scott, what do you know?
Let's do
Let's
high
do
school.
high
Yeah,
school.
we do high school.
Just slightly different. But the very concept, the general concept is similar enough that if you understand one, you should understand the other. Okay. So tuition is paid by the school district. What we are talking about here is K through 12 general education. Special education, there's a whole separate chapter. Career and technical education, there's a whole separate chapter, except for two instances are covered here. Actually, one instance for two schools. We'll get to it. And pre-K is covered by a whole separate statute. So we're just talking general education K through 12 here. So except as otherwise provided for technical students, the district pays the full tuition charged its students attending a public high school in Vermont or in a neighboring state, or a public or approved independent school functioning as an approved area CTE center. This is the one instance in this chapter that we're talking about CTE tuition. So our two independent schools that function as approved area CTE centers, this statute tells us that school districts have to pay the full tuition charged to students if they are attending one of those two schools. And there's nothing in this statute about requiring the student to then participate in CTE, right?
Okay,
It's just
that's Lyndon and St. James.
correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Any other CTE is not covered here.
And just for everybody's in the field, so the independent school meeting educational quality standards, that's their Bedford Academy, sure.
There's a whole separate section of law that tells you how you become an independent school meeting education quality standards. But so full tuition charged for public schools, independent schools functioning as area CTE centers, or independent schools meeting EQS. We're going to skip down to subsection C. Well, actually, let's look at subdivision B2. We're going to skip B1 for a second and look at B2. So the board of a receiving public school district or approved independent school functioning as a CTE center or independent school meeting education quality standards may enter into tuition agreements with the boards of sending districts that have terms differing from the provisions of those subsections provided. The receiving district or school must offer identical terms to all sending districts. Just to note that there are going to be different, there has the potential to be different agreements between sending and receiving schools all over the state. Whether they exist or not, I can't speak to that, but the law allows it. And then subsection C is what we look at, generally speaking, when we're thinking about tuition to our independent schools.
Excuse me, the law allows it as long as that receiving school makes those same terms available to all sending schools.
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Sending districts. Yeah.
There's a provision, I don't want to say to get around it, but there is a provision that allows for that to be modified. We're going to look at that right now.
There are exemptions.
And it's a vote. So the district shall pay an amount not to exceed the average announced tuition for Vermont Union High Schools. So not all Vermont high schools, just Union High Schools. And it's the average announced tuition. We'll get to what announced tuition means in a second. For the year of attendance for students enrolled in an approved independent school, not functioning as a CTE center because we're paying the full tuition charge. Or any higher amount approved by the electorate. So an independent school could charge more than the average announced tuition for one school district because its voters have approved that. But if the boards of the school district or the independent school that's meeting education quality standards or functioning as an area CTE center want to have a different arrangement other than average announced tuition or the full tuition, they have to do it the same. So if it's between the boards, it has to be the same every way, but if the electorate has approved it, it could be above any higher amount. Generally speaking, it's the same for elementary schools, generally. Only we're looking at average announced tuition for Union Elementary School, not high school.
Right. No CT.
And no CTE comparison, but the same, the independent school meeting education quality standards concept applies. Yep. Okay, so then I think the next most interesting place to look is section 825. Maximum tuition rate calculated net cost per pupil. This is the law. I did not write this, but it exists. And what we are going to talk about in the law is called net cost per pupil. When I switch over to the agency's website, you're going to see that this concept of net cost per pupil is referred to as allowable tuition. The statute has not been changed. Why we have that confusion, I don't know. Calculated net cost per pupil defined. So net cost per pupil is the same thing as allowable tuition. So it doesn't help. We have two A words, announced tuition and allowable tuition. So all I'll say here is that this statute says that the secretary defines how to calculate net cost per pupil. That's what this says. And it excludes certain expenditures from what net cost per pupil will equal out to. So expenditures shall include those for equipment and school building, construction, additions, or renovations, but exclude some sorts of transportation costs, expenditures for maintenance and principal and infrastructure building used exclusively for boarding students, if any expenditures for special education, tuition payments for CTE. There is a state board rule on net cost per pupil. And it essentially lays out how net cost per pupil is calculated. How do net cost per pupil or allowable tuition and announced tuition work together? Well,
That is the question.
okay. So this is my understanding. I am only human. I could be wrong. I just want to state that on the record. My understanding is that announced tuition is a district's estimate of what their net cost per pupil will be. Why do I have that understanding? Great question. Because I have read this. So this is a guide the agency puts out to the field. Oh. Okay. Announced tuition data collection. So I have skimmed this. I have not committed it to memory. But after reviewing this document, my takeaway is the agency provides this guide to the field to collect for the data to be used to calculate their announced tuition. It's the same data and the same calculation for net cost per pupil, just done at a different point in time. So the announced tuition is coming out at a certain time in the year so that school districts can budget for next year's tuition payments. The net cost per pupil is calculated later in the year when you actually know what your expenditures are.
And so in the context of when we're talking about budgeting, we would want to use announced tuition because that's more of the budgeting number, and the other one is more of a reconciliation number,
I think that's
more
correct.
of spending.
And agree on that?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not saying that word, I'm happy.
Okay. So. You.
We shared an idea with you in our last gathering.
Yeah,
And
and we do
understand that
not-
you have another idea.
We do not at this point have another
Oh,
idea.
you don't?
No.
Okay.
We do have another proposal for funding.
Ah.
Having talked to higher powers.
There are no higher.
Powers that think they are high.
Thank you, Senator.
We're gonna start with the 15.5. But we want to go down 1% every year, so that it's constant. Until we've got either the foundation formula or we hit 112%, which is where you started. And the tuition was as new to us,
No, it's new side of the
was
scale.
to you, so we need, I think, time to come up to look at your and your tuition was to freeze
To freeze with an affair.
with an inflator. Okay, we freezing the allowable, the announced, or the actual charge. That's the announced,
The
right?
average amounts
The average.
for please someone who wrote the words down after we considered them, please tell us what the words are.
Yes.
We're freezing two different things.
Okay, yeah, I want to make sure we're all arguing.
And we actually have language that we could give you if you wanted.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Okay, we're gonna do that.
Okay.
Do you want me to share my screen?
Sure.
So for public schools.
Yeah.
It would be, the tuition paid to a public receiving school shall not exceed the school's announced tuition for the previous fiscal year increased by NEPA. And then for independent schools, it would be the tuition paid to an approved independent school shall not exceed the tuition charged by the school for the previous fiscal year, increased by NEPA.
So it's the actual tuition amount, it's not an average. Right. Okay. So there, everybody is being counted.
And it's just to be, it's
What about,
it's the fiscal year that just happened, so no one can, yeah, so it's,
Okay.
those numbers are already exist in the world.
okay, this should
Yeah.
be, so it's 2025.
7,
In perpetuity, so this would just without further.
similar to the excess spending threshold, which is frozen in perpetuity,
Okay.
actually.
This, well, the way this is drafted is just for fiscal years 28 and 29.
Thinking that the foundation formula would kick in. It doesn't mirror the same reduction of the excess spending threshold that we're holding the other schools subject to.
What about?
And if we're gonna go on
CTE?
forever, this should go on. We were silent on that, given how much more complicated that area of statute is and the late hour of this negotiations. Feel free to
Being that it's
address that.
a late hour, and I guess I would go back to if anybody knows of any existing chart of what these tuition amounts have been over the last 10 years, I'd love to know how this translates.
There is a table that was actually Beth had it open, had the link.
I can send a link to
Yeah.
the agency's website, which has the allowable tuition report and the announced tuition reports going back to 2015.
And we think there might be some data anomalies in there, and they're only cleaning up prospectively, not retroactively, on the data errors.
Is there an average?
I don't,
Yeah,
and I don't
COVID in there.
and I don't want to avoid anything, but I think when you scan it, you'll see that there's such a wide range that I feel nervous about trying to get someone to friends. Yeah, Julia, who does more math than me.
Julie Rick of JFO. I did present in Senate Finance Committee earlier this session. It wasn't a 10-year trend, but it was looking at the change from 25 to 26 of the tuition, that both allowable and announced. You have both spreadsheets to look through. And you see that dependent on the school, they're quite significant different in terms of how they change year over year. I could send a link around. Again, that'd be helpful.
If I may ask, Vice Counsel one question. I had a conversation with someone within the Agency of Education who said that some schools, please correct me if I'm wrong or right on this, some schools had not adjusted their announced tuition rate, even though their allowable tuition had fluctuated greatly. So they may not have been as proactive in adjusting their announced tuition. Is that an accurate statement?
I'm not sure I follow there. What we skipped over, which what I'm happy to skip over, is that there's actually a truing up. Are we talking about the truing up process?
No,
We're not.
no. I think you are, in a way.
Okay.
Because even with after the truing up process, they still hadn't adjusted their announced tuition rate.
Well, they've already announced it.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would need to adjust it for that year,
Right.
right? It would need to be if the truing up process would take effect, like would jump into place.
Yeah.
And it would be that 3%, 10% over under capture.
Right.
But I don't know that they need to adjust their announced once it's been announced.
I was thinking for the following years, that's what I was talking about.
It should be a new calculation for the next year theoretically.
Yeah, and this may be totally useless information for our conversation, so let's go on.
I guess I will say, I have heard testimony before that different districts reconcile at various paces and with various accuracy.
There are, and this is why this could become problematic is for the public schools that receive it, and we're talking about what's the net cost per pupil, is that the term now?
Yeah.
Okay, or allowable, whatever you're talking about, okay, and just to level set, the only receiving schools that can have that calculation done are the public schools, right? It's only for the public schools. There are a number of schools that and I don't know why, but their announced tuition is significantly less than their allowable tuition. Now, if they're billing back for the difference at the end of the year, and that's their common practice, that's what they do. And if somehow we're blocking that bill back, then that district's got a problem.
This is just for 2 years.
So if the rest of this needs to continue as long as this construct continues.
Yeah.
We, in our proposals, we've been assuming that the foundation formula is gonna take effect, and I think in your proposals, you are creating situations where the foundation formula does not take effect.
I think that
I have like a somewhat superstitious view of this whole thing. That I put to just like focus on the foundation formula.
yeah,
And if we create too many options for if there's no foundation formula, I worry we will be preparing for a future I'm not interested in.
I think that if we don't have the foundation formula go into effect, we will all be back here with a very new sketch map, starting all over.
But just a counterpoint I might offer to that is I hear you and that you don't want to set yourself up for failure. But I also see that there's merit in having that clearly communicated to the very talented budget analysts out there. If they know on the record that the extended second spending threshold is going to drop from 112, they're going to communicate that to their school boards and planning boards. So I think it sends a strong message to the field that we do need to look at spending. So that's why I think there's merit in having that continued trail, even if the foundation formula doesn't get.
Thank you.
Okay, but we don't want schools that's looking at the excess spending be able to charge extra in tuition to make up for the excess. So
We don't want that, nor do we want the opposite where a school is experiencing that spending threshold has to squeeze its elementary school extra tight because they can't control their high school.
So by law, okay, a public school, they cannot, when they go through the true-up process and their net cost per pupil is calculated, that they can only be reimbursed for the actual cost of operating that school and educating those kids. They can't get more than what it costs them to operate the school. So, which leads,
I think we've heard a lot of testimony that it's not actually working that way in the right.
well, there should not be a school district out there charging the sending school district, it's a public school, for more than it costs to operate that school. That should not be.
Do you think there should be independent schools that are doing that?
If we don't calculate the net cost per pupil for independent schools, they set their tuition at a rate to operate that school, knowing that that's all the money they're getting. There's no bill back, so they set the tuition at what it's gonna cost to operate the school, and they don't have a bill back authority. So, yeah.
So we put a proposal on the table,
and
and
we've
so,
got to come up with how we're on
okay,
tuition. I think it makes sense that there is some kind of downward pressure on tuition in schools because when we get to the foundation formula, they're only going to get the foundation formula per student.
so do you wanna meet again in a little bit?
We are on that work for 4:30.
I'm starting to feel like we're the committee that's holding things up. Do you guys want to go in another room and talk really quick?
I have to go to the 9:55 conference. Sorry,
Yeah,
so do you wanna try at 5:30?
I think we'll be on the floor in half an hour.
Okay, so 5 maybe?
Yeah, let's try for 5.
Does that work for you? Yeah, no,
Neither. So this, I'm sorry.